You know, it's good to see you today, and so we are thankful for your presence with us. We've got some announcements. I'm going to give the first announcement being that you may have noticed in your email box heart and soul gatherings that are starting up, and so please take a look at that. There should be, Michael, where did you put that? Okay, in the table in the North-X is a sign-up sheet with some times, so please put the time in which you would like to do. If you can sign up when you see somebody who you don't know as well, that's actually preferable to somebody that you do know better. So that's kind of the way these are designed, is to get us to know each other better, heart and soul. So that's why they're called Heart and Soul Gatherings. So please sign up, and we hope to have a wonderful time getting to know each other on a deeper level as Christian brothers and sisters. Thank you. Are there other announcements?
Quit laughing. I just got two short ones today. First one is our mission of the month for this month is the Sanford Center, and we have a card out by the front door like we always do, and they can use of all sorts of snack things, cereal, crackers with cheese or peanut butter in them, juice boxes, individual packages of cookies or chips or you name it. And if you get it up here, I'll see that it gets delivered. If you want to take it right down to the Sanford Center on Geneva Street, that's fine too. Just tell them where you're bringing it from. And the second thing is the fellowship hour in July. We're missing the middle of the month. So if anybody's got an opportunity to sign up there, please do so. Thank you.
Yep. So I'm going to be out of town this week, just so everybody knows that I won't be in the office, but I'll still be able to be reached kind of intermittently through my email. And, you can call and leave a message too. I'll just be camping, so it's a little intermittent based on where I can get service. But yeah, still be able to be reached, in that limited manner.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see your smiling faces here, and thank you for those of you who are online as well. We're glad for you all to join us. Welcome to First Congregational United Church of Christ of Sioux City, Iowa, a community of faith where you matter. God has created us all to matter, and we believe that we all do matter. You matter no matter your abilities or disabilities, your successes or failures. Your worth is in who you are, not what you can or can't do. You matter no matter your age or ethnicity, your mental or emotional or physical attributes, or your family structure. You matter no matter your past or your present. You matter if you've got a criminal record or if you've never been arrested. You are a person of inestimable worth who we believe needs to be loved just as you need to love others. We all matter here, for we are a community who values all persons, no exceptions.
Good morning. Centering our souls. Creator God, we are thankful for the blessings of life, and yet we know there's too much strife. You gave us the power to imagine and to wonder. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we blunder. Yet we do not always honor the gifts we're given, but seek to gain more as by desire we're driven. Give us wisdom to discern right from wrong, that we may sing of virtue's song. Then let us eat the fruits that heal and set our course on common weal. Hand in hand may we walk in peace and follow, and from our sins we find release.
"32 in the black hymnal. At this time, we'll have our time for children. So all God's children, or those who are of such a spirit of themselves that they are childlike, you're welcome to come up too. So I once had a guy who was in his 80s that regularly came up every Sunday for the children's time because he felt that he had a childlike spirit. So anybody who's feeling particularly young today, you're welcome to come up too. Looks like we've got at least one that's going to be coming. All right. Come on up, buddy. How are you doing today? You doing pretty well today? Good. You had a pretty good week? I had a pretty good week too. So I want to know, we all hear stories, and do you have a favorite story? Do you know the name of that story? Oh, it's a Transformer story. Oh, those are good stories, right? Yeah, so, well, the same thing. So Transformers, they're also in like comic books, aren't they? And so whether it's in a comic book or there used to be when I was growing up, now it was long before I was growing up too, but it was still around it's called Aesop's Fables. It's a book of fables, and fables are kind of made up stories. They didn't actually happen, but they have a meaning to them. And so kind of like the Transformer stories, it's the same sort of thing. It's maybe didn't really happen exactly that way, but stories, whether they actually happened or not, can have a lot of meaning for us and can really spark our imagination. So I think that's a really good thing, don't you? Yeah, me. Oh, is it real gold? I doubt it. I'm guessing that's bronze. But I may be wrong too. It could be. So speaking of gold, there is a fable about a goose who laid a, do you know what he laid? What she laid? A golden egg. You've heard of that one. So that's a fable. So the goose that laid a golden egg did it every day. And the people who took care of that goose, they felt that they were really lucky to have this goose. But then they got a little greedy and they wanted more and more golden eggs. And so they couldn't wait for the goose to lay one every day. They wanted to see if the goose had a whole bunch of golden eggs inside it. So they ended up cutting the goose open, and it killed the poor goose. And when they did, they recognized there were no golden eggs, and it is just like any other goose. And so because of their greed and wanting more and more and more, they didn't think about the life of the goose. And so that's kind of the moral that we need, is that we should never put things that we can possess as being more important than people. People always matter more. So that is the story of that. So some of our favorite stories, like the Transformers, or like the goose that made the golden eggs, they help us to think about our lives and how we can live our lives better. And that's one of the nice things about stories. And the thing, too, about stories is we can share them with one another. We can tell the stories to each other, and we can all feel like we're a part of that story. So I've always liked thinking about stories, and it really never mattered to me whether they actually happened or not. It's the point of the story that makes all the difference in the world. So I just want us to think about those things today, and I hope that when you hear stories, you'll think about how it might apply to your life.
I hear about stories. Some of them, I can't remember that book, the name of it.
Oh, yeah. It's nice to have stories read to you, too, isn't it? I really have liked that myself. All right, let's have a prayer before we let you go back to your class. Oh God, we're thankful for the stories that are told that we can tell to one another and that make so much meaning in our lives. Help us to tell stories to others that we may share that joy of doing so. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for coming up. In our time of prayer, we share not only our joys, concerns, but also any acts of compassion or kindness that we have witnessed or that we've heard about or that we've actually performed ourselves. So does any have any of those things that they would like to share?
Leona Eismo is celebrating her 90th birthday on Tuesday.
Oh, can you repeat the name, please?
Leon Eidsmo.
Okay.
Leon Eidsmo. Since I didn't use the mic.
All right, very good.
He has his own mic over there.
I want to share a joy, and that is that all the support that you people have given Penny in her time of need, and I really appreciate it. She's doing as she should. I'd like to say well, but it's a long journey, as all of you know. So thank you for keeping her in your prayers and thoughts.
And I'd just like to say that, I've called Penny myself a couple times, and I'd asked if she wanted to visit, and she said, I've got so many people visiting me. Let's wait until, people have gone away a little bit more, and then we'll have a chat. So it's nice to know that she does have support, but keep her and the family in your prayer. Anyone else? Anyone have a story of kindness or compassion that they'd like to share? Well, I'll share one here because I always try to have one on hand. And there's a group of mainly women, but also a whole tribe in the Amazon. They're called the Warani. So you've maybe not heard of the Warani people, but they're an indigenous nation in a remote part of the Ecuadorian Amazon rainforest. It's probably safe to say that even the Ecuadorians didn't give them a whole lot of thought, as there was a government decision to sell their ancestral lands for oil exploration. But the native neighbors were not going to lose their homes without a fight. So traveling by canoe and on small plane, hundreds of Warani men and women showed up to protest the move and filing a lawsuit against the government. And it worked, and the tiny neighborhood saved 7 million acres of rainforest, helping not just their immediate neighbors, but all their neighbors on this planet who depend on the Amazon for fresh air. One of them said, "Our territory is our decision, and now since we are owners, we are not going to let oil enter and destroy our natural surroundings and kill our culture." So that's kind of a nice story of, they were kind of looking to save themselves, but they also help everybody in this world because that's such an important resource for the world as a whole. Are there any other things that anybody would like to mention? All right. Let us be in silent meditation as we take our hearts to God. God of wonderful stories, we are thankful for the many stories we have heard, read, and imagined. Stories that help us to imagine a better world, that aid us to be better people, that help us to connect with one another in ways in which we recognize the humanity of each person and the sacredness of each thing you have created. Help us to share our stories with one another, to listen to the stories of others, and to see how we are all one family. We ask your blessings on those we have mentioned in our prayer requests, as well as those we have mentioned in weeks past. Be also with those whose needs you know, but whom we do not. Help us to find ways to shower our love on others, both near and far. Grant that in discovering truths within our own faith that we do not deny truths others find in their own faith. Instead, help us to learn from one another what you have taught us all. May our compassion be for those who are unlike us as much as those like us, for we are all siblings of one another. For those who have not known enough love in their life, O God, help us to share ours with them in the ways that they most need most. Grant us wisdom in how to come together and to create a more loving, peaceful, and just world. And grant us the strength to be your people. May it be so now and always. Amen.
The prayer as Jesus taught. Our God, O God, our divine parent, may your presence be ever revered. May your peace and justice dwell among us. May your love and compassion live within and between us. Nourish us daily with the necessities of life, sustenance for our bodies, and inspiration for our spirits. And may the forgiveness we give be that which we receive, the kindness we show be that which we know. Lead us on virtuous paths and distance us from evil. For your world is to be our world, your values our values, then, now, and always. May it be so. Hymn number 568.
Today will be a new experience for us today, which you haven't since I've been here, and maybe, I don't know if you've had one of these before, but it's called a polylogue. And what it is we're going to look at the text today. You can see it's a whole chapter of Genesis, chapter 3, and we're going to look at it, and I want you to participate in making comments or asking questions about it so that we can all kind of learn from each other how we have interpreted this story. Sometimes I think if we only listen to one person, even if it's me, that we don't get a broader perspective. So this is an opportunity for us to be able to do that. So we'll have two mics going on, one on this side, one on this side, and anybody who has a question or a comment about the text, you're welcome to make that so we can have a kind of a dialogue amongst all of us. That's what makes a polylogue, is that many people are having a dialogue together. So the text is the one that you see in your bulletin, which I will read and you may follow along. Now the serpent was more duplicitous than any other wild animal that the virtuous God had created. It inquired of the woman, "Did God say you are not to eat from every tree in the garden?" The woman replied to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said you're not to eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor are you to touch it, or you will die." But the serpent retorted to the woman, "You will not die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your vision will be widened, and you will be like God, being made aware of good and evil." So when the woman perceived that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the vision of both was widened, and they perceived that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. They heard the sound of the virtuous God walking in the garden at the time of the evening breeze, and Adam, that is humanity, and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the virtuous God among the trees of the garden. But the virtuous God called to humanity and said, "Where are you?" And humanity said, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself." God said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat?" And the man said, "The woman whom you gave me to be with, she gave me the fruit from the tree, and I ate." Then the virtuous God said to the woman, "What is this that you have done?" The woman said, "The serpent tricked me, and I ate." The virtuous God said to the serpent, "Because you have acted this way, you are cursed among all animals and all wild creatures. Upon your belly you shall go, and dust will consume all the days of your life. There will be acrimony between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. And they will strike your head, and you will strike their heel." And to the woman, God said, "Your agony in childbirth will be exceedingly great. In pain you will bring forth children, yet your desire will be for your husband, and that one will rule over you. And to the man he said, because you have credulously heeded the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree about which I commanded you, you are not to eat of it. Cursed will be the ground for you. In toil you will eat from it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it will bring forth for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you will eat bread until you return to the earth, for out of it you were taken. You are earth, and to the earth you will return." The man named his wife Eve, that is, living one, because she was the mother of all that is living. And the virtuous God made garments of skins for Adam and the wife and clothed them. Then the virtuous God said, "See, humanity has become like one of us, perceiving good and evil, and now they might reach out their hands and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." Therefore, the virtuous God sent them forth from the Garden of Eden to till the earth from which they were created. God drove out the humans, and at the east of the Garden of Eden, God placed the cherubim and a sword flaming and turning to serve as sentinel of the way to the tree of life. May God add God's understanding and questions to these words for us. So I'll begin with asking, who has a thought, a comment, a question about this passage? It all makes complete sense, right?
So my first question is really loud. My first question is, if Adam and Eve were the first two people and they didn't have a language, how did they know that Eve meant life?
Good questions. See, there is. I will do some more explaining through some things I've already written. So if you'll look on our Facebook page, there's 2 things that I wrote about this passage, which you can go home and look at that time. But it's the points to ponder, which is kind of a commentary on this, which answers your question in the sense that maybe we should see these not as literal stories as much as mythic stories that are trying to get at a bigger meaning of things. So when it asks about when we, as 21st century people, we like to be really detailed in looking and seeing where there's errors in something. Are we kind of like that? And so the people of that day did not think quite in those terms. They simply wanted to create a story which might have a lot of loose ends, as this one does, and simply try to make sense of why things are in the bigger scheme of things. Why is it that we have people? And I think they kind of thought, well, there must have been 2 people at one time, even though if we look at kind of what scientists tell us, there may have been a lot of people from beginning times. But in any case, it is one of these questions that makes us, I can't give you an exact answer to that because I don't know. But it does make us think about these things. And I think that's part of what the stories were written about, that is to get us to think more about why things are the way they are. And that's, I think, what this story is, the bigger picture of it is trying to get us to think why things are the way they are, rather than saying they were exactly this way. They had a different way of looking at it than we do today. So, thank you, Greg. Do you have a follow-up?
Well, and I know I'm playing devil's advocate because I don't really believe the world was created in a literal 7 days. But if you look at science, the 7 epochs are in line with the 7 days. So maybe there was a lot more time in the garden than just 1 day to get tempted by the tree. I mean, so I agree with you 100%. Their time was, the story was written for people who didn't understand the periods of time and the length of thousands of years. So I get it.
Yeah. All right. Other thoughts? Questions? Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to get a little political here, and it's not political bad, but if you look at verse 12, where it says, the man said, the woman whom you gave to me to be with me, she gave me the fruit from the tree and I ate. I think it's kind of interesting. I'm going to apply it toward today. We have some political leaders now who are saying, well, it wasn't me, my wife did this. So I'm sorry, that just jumped out at me. And so I'm just bringing that into the present time. So do with that as you wish.
Oh, well, one of the things that, there's a group of theologians, which, whether male or female, call themselves feminist theologians. And they point that this is a rather sexist passage because we have a little bit later on that the woman is to obey the man, which, man, we all know the truth of that, don't we? That would be a no. So, it is interesting that, if we look at this as purely that this is exactly what God wanted us to do, we're probably missing the point that everything that a people write is culturally determined. They look at it from their perspective. And at that time, even more than today, men dominated the society. So they wrote a story in which would kind of reinforce that. And so that's, I think, why we have that. Not because it's necessarily what a wise God would say this is the best way. It's just the way that the people knew how to explain the story at that time, given their own social circumstances. Does that make sense? Do you have a follow-up on that? Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. One of the things I had never heard for a long time, that Adam here not only blamed his wife, but also kind of blamed God as well. If we look closely at the text here, he's kind of blaming, well, you're the one who gave her to me. So you're as much at fault. It was this, I'm not at fault, somebody else is at fault. And to me, that is an expression of human culture itself, isn't it? Whether it was old-time culture that written thousands of years ago, which this likely started as an oral story, probably at least 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. And then it eventually got written down in the form that we have it today, in different languages, and then got translated over into our language to the form it's in today. And I think oftentimes, if we look for those bigger, what is being said, we know that it's true that still today, people don't want to take blame for anything. And ourselves included. If we can pass the buck to somebody else, it's just kind of human nature that we do that. That's not the right way that we need to think about it, but we see it show up in this story. Adam blames Eve. Eve blames the serpent. The serpent doesn't get to blame anyone in this story, but, if allowed the opportunity, I'm sure the serpent would have blamed somebody too. It's just kind of the way of the world. And I think that's what these stories are about, is to help us to see the broader picture of why society is and why we act the way that we do. Does that make sense? Other thoughts, questions?
I like the idea of what you're saying, that this is it's like a fable.
Yeah.
And it bothers me when I hear people say, but it says in the Bible, and I think, oh my Lord, if we did everything that was in the Bible, we'd be in big trouble, So I like the idea that you believe, as I believe, that these are fables. These are to learn from, and take responsibility for your actions is something that we all need to learn,
Thank you, Ruth. Well said. Other thoughts, questions? Oh boy, we don't have a, well, let me take a look myself here at, do you think that, so the people ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? Which means before they ate of that, they didn't know the difference between good and evils, right? That makes logical sense. If they ate and then learned about the knowledge of good and evil, that means beforehand they really didn't know the difference between good and evil. So were they wrong in eating of the fruit, given they didn't know the difference between good and evil? I throw that, anybody got an answer to
Well,
that?
this story tells us, number one, women should be second place to men and follow instructions.
Oh, you're
It
going,
also tells us it's crowd control. And I believe in the Word of God, but I also believe that man twisted it around to fit what was socially acceptable at the time. So crowd control says women know your place, take the blame for anything your husband does wrong, and be lucky he's still around. And lastly, don't explore. Don't think. Don't explore. Don't try this tree. Well, I don't know if it's really true or not. I don't know if there was a here's the line you shouldn't cross. But the story's telling us don't explore beyond what you're told to believe. Because if you do, then you'll know more than you should, and all will be revealed. My question was about to become, I like that Adam and Eve were nice and vegan and used fig leaves, but why did God clothe them in the skin of animals? What dead animal did he find to clothe them in? Again, I don't know that I'm being literal. There was a point to the way the story was originally written that was important, that they used what they had available. I don't get why there was an animal skin. Did God kill an animal and make him a fur coat? I don't know.
yeah, it's interesting, and we see in the first, so this is the third chapter of Genesis. The first two chapters are two, not one, but two creation stories. You get one story in which humans were created first, and you get another story in which they were created last in creation. And both stories have different emphases. If you take a look at those first two chapters, you read one as a complete story, and then you read chapter 2 as a complete story. You'll notice that there's differences between those. And one of the things that we need to remember about the Bible is it was composed over the course of centuries, and that there were different commentators with different perspectives on what should be included in the sacred text of the Bible. And so there's at least 3 different main traditions. There's the Yahwist, the Elohist, and the Elohim traditions, in which people from those 3 traditions had 3 different perspectives of how to tell the story about God and God's relationship to us. So you get in those first 2 chapters 2 different versions of creation stories by 2 of those traditions. And then this follows in a kind of a blended sense of those traditions, this chapter 3. So it gets rather complex after a while, but it reminds us that it's a lot more complex than what we might take it for. And that there was a lot going on over the course of many centuries to end up with what we have today. And that's part of our understanding, is that we need to recognize that's the way it was. It just didn't come down at one specific point in time, and that God wrote all the words God self, which some people believe. I don't. I really take it that we've got cultures over many centuries trying to tell and retell these stories, and the way we've got it now, some biblical scholars said we probably shouldn't have ever written it down, because the stories are there for us to adapt to our particular setting and to the circumstance in which we live in. And that's the way we become a part of the story, is to keep telling the stories. But we might change them a little bit, because if somebody's over here is going through depression, maybe we need to leave out certain parts of the story for their sake, and maybe add something new that's going to help that person. Or somebody over here just lost a loved one. We might want to change our wording a little bit. And so that's the flexibility of stories that our ancient predecessors believe, that sometimes we think, well, it's written down just the way it is, and that's the way it is for all time. That's not the way they thought at all. They thought it needed to be changed and adapted for the particular situation. And actually, I think they were right and we were wrong in that. But that's another story. Other thoughts about this passage, anyone? Yeah.
I noticed that the virtuous God referred to him or herself as in the plural.
Yes, it's in the plural. And there has been so much conversation about that by theologians and such that I can't wrap it all up to you, but let me give a very short synopsis. At least one group of theologians believes that the us refers to a heavenly host in which there are a number of heavenly beings in which all had had the sort of powers of God. And so we need to remember that in ancient cultures, they were much more aware of many different gods from different cultures. And so they were always going into this or that land and learning about the gods of that particular land. So that's kind of a going back to that time in which recognize that they think that there are many gods rather than just one God. So that's just a very short synopsis. There's a lot that goes into that can be learned a little bit more. But yeah, thank you for noting that. There is a plural there. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions? I think we're probably at the end of our time today, but I thank you so much for joining with me in this conversation. And I hope to do some polylogs in the future in which we can do this, because I think it's nice for us to be able to hear each other and the thoughts and ideas. I know for me as your new pastor, it's good for me to hear kind of your questions, to know the things that you're thinking about so that I can maybe speak to those things a little better. So thank you for your participation. All right, let us stand and sing our next hymn, which is written in your bulletin, Transcendent, Ineffable, Great Mystery.
We dedicate ourselves to God's service through faithfulness, giving of our tithes and offerings. Generosity arises from gratitude like heat arises from fire. Like fire, gratitude is lovely to see, but when it warms others with generosity, that is when it becomes a true blessing. We invite you to place your offering in the offering plate as it is passed, or you may give online or by mail if you are joining us virtually. Thank you.
Leise flehen meiner Lieder durch die Nacht zu dir. In den stillen Hainen nieder, Liebchen, komm zu mir. Fließt schlanke Wipfel rauschen in des Mondes Licht, in des Mondes Licht, des Verräters feindlich Lauschen, fürchte Hode nicht, fürchte Hode nicht. Hörst die Nachtigallen schlagen, ach, sie flehen dich. Mit der Töner süßen Klagen flehen sie für mich. Sie verstehen des Busens Sehnen, kennen Liebesschmerz, kennen Liebesschmerz. Rühren mit den Silbertönen jedes feige Herz, jedes feige Herz. Lass habt ihr die Brust bewegen, Liebchen, höre mich, bebend har ich dir entgegen. Komm, begliche mich, komm, begliche mich, begliche mich.
Join me in a unison prayer of dedication. O God of Pentecost, breathe your spirit of understanding, love, and respect into our hearts and minds, that we may help create a world of peace. Let these monies that we give up be multiplied in serving justice in our world. Bless us as givers, that we may be joyful and thankful in our giving. Bless those who are beneficiaries of these gifts, that they may have their needs met and their hopes lifted. In the Spirit of Christ, we pray. May it be so.
Hear these words of encouragement for your own spiritual journey. No matter how we were made, we are creatures of beauty and loveliness whenever we seek to bless more than we seek to gain. Go forth to let your beauty shine on all creation, and may loveliness flow from all of your thoughts and deeds. Now and always, blessings may you be.